We have urgent reports from the front line. Enemy Russian assault units on. Motorcycles charged open ground at breakneck speeds, attempting a high-mobility breakthrough to clear the kill zone before Ukrainian forces could respond. But that tactical speed advantage collapsed in seconds. Precision kinetic strikes intercepted the moving bikes one by one, instantly shattering their tactical formation. The critical detail here is not just the sheer devastation. It is the clinical manner of the execution. Rapid, lethal, and executed, as if the ambush had been pre-coordinated before the enemy reached the ingress point. This is not merely an isolated intercept of Russian motorcycle units by Ukrainian FPV drone squads on the contact line. This exposes the harsh operational survival calculus for any assault force on today's battlefield. So what did Ukrainian early warning intelligence detect before pulling the trigger? And why has this high-speed doctrine transformed from a tactical asset into a lethal vulnerability for these lightning assaults? Stand by with military force for the tactical breakdown. Russian commanders are deploying light motorcycle units directly to the forward line because high velocity is their last remaining tactical asset under relentless fire. With heavy armor facing staggering attrition rates, enemy planners are pivoting to low-cost, high-speed alternatives to transport kinetic assault elements toward Ukrainian fortifications. Dirt bikes are now fielded as the primary tool for these rapid insertions. They allow small fire teams to advance rapidly through restricted terrain and negotiate broken ground that would bog down or expose mechanized armor. On this high-threat battlefield, every extra second in the open red zone's an asset for kinetic target acquisition. Minimizing transit time narrows the defensive reaction window for Ukrainian forces. This shift signals a broader evolution in enemy tactical operations. Instead of exposing massive mechanized columns to direct fire, the adversary is deploying decentralized fire teams that require minimal operational staging and leave no thermal or visual signature. This does not eliminate threat vectors, but it reshapes the attack profile, sacrificing armored protection for sheer, unadulterated speed during the initial ingress. Tactically speaking, Moscow is trying to sustain offensive velocity by swapping out heavy armor for highly agile, low-signature light infantry. This transition underscores how extreme defensive interdiction is forcing Russian planners to rewrite their tactical approach doctrines. While armored columns bring heavy fire support, their thermal and visual signatures make them instantly targetable upon staging. These units trade protection for maneuverability. They operate completely unarmored, yet grant field commanders the capability to deploy highly mobile vanguard forces, highly dispersed, and independent of predictable road networks. They infiltrate defensive gaps, bypass cratered routes, and reach the staging zone with minimal logistical overhead. Dispersed assaults induce tactical panic and oversaturate localized defenses, particularly when multiple small groups execute simultaneous coordinate breakthroughs. This defines their utility in close-quarters assault operations, where initial speed and timing override the necessity for heavy armor protection. This deployment pattern confirms a shift away from concentrated armored thrusts toward highly fragmented, decentralized infiltration attempts. Moscow is not abandoning heavy armor, but they are incorporating asymmetric light infantry methods to sustain attrition pressure along the line. That doctrine exposes tactical flexibility born of material constraints. While it demonstrates an urgent bid for mobility, it underscores the near impossibility of maneuvering heavy armor through contested zones. However, in this theater, transit velocity is not the critical variable determining mission success. The decisive factor is whether their operational staging was compromised before the first engine started. Kyiv's tactical edge is established long before loitering munitions are launched. Early operational detection is the absolute prerequisite. While Russian motorcycle units outpace traditional armored combat vehicles, that velocity is completely neutralized if our early warning assets track them miles from our forward trenches. Airborne recon platforms allow Ukrainian operators to scan deep territory, mapping out the enemy's exact transit corridors. This is vital. An incoming assault element telegraphs its tactical intent through its heading, spacing, and tempo before making direct contact. If you and I analyze these open fields and narrow tracks, the enemy's exact line of advance becomes totally obvious. The moment those indicators light up, the advancing unit is no longer just marching. They are entering a slaughter that has already begun from above. Next comes the rapid feed of target coordinates. Once those motorcycle squads are spotted, their coordinates go straight to FPV teams waiting on the zero line. This slashes the sensor to shooter loop entirely. In this brutal arena, those seconds decide if an assault group keeps moving or gets wiped out on the approach. Ukrainian forces are not waiting for Russian troops to reach their trenches before they open fire. They are launching intercepts while the enemy is totally exposed in no man's land. This completely rewrites the tactical clock. The battle no longer starts when infantry physically clash. It begins the second we spot them and trigger the kill chain. That timing is everything. A force caught in the open cannot take cover, reorganize, or establish supporting fire. This instant target handoff gives the drone operators absolute confidence because their intelligence is fresh and highly lethal at the moment of launch. But continuous tracking is where this battle is won or lost. A speeding target can veer off, hide behind tree lines, or break contact. If our eyes in the sky lose them, that initial sighting becomes completely useless, and the tactical advantage is gone. That is why constant aerial surveillance is non-negotiable out there. If we keep those motorcycles in our sights, the strike team can hit them with deadly precision, relying on real-time telemetry instead of guesswork. This maintains relentless pressure on the enemy during their entire advance. Recent engagements near Sloviansk in early 2026 prove this exact model works. The defenders hit back so fast that Russian assault groups could not regroup, organize, or even find cover before being torn apart. This is not just about faster reaction times. It is about dictating a brutal tempo where the enemy is hunted from the very second their engines start. This tactical system is revolutionary because it turns real-time intelligence directly into raw firepower. Ukraine is not just deploying these drones for passive surveillance. They are linking reconnaissance to live fire fast enough to crush the assault before the enemy can deploy. That completely changes frontline dynamics. High speed is no longer a guarantee of survival or tactical initiative. In fact, moving fast often makes them stand out more on routes we are already monitoring. Huge dust clouds and predictable formations make these fast-moving units instant targets instead of ghosts. It gives Ukrainian command units crucial minutes to assess threats and coordinate backup artillery strikes if the first intercept fails or if secondary threats appear en route. When that first strike lands so early, the entire balance of power shifts. The enemy is still driving forward, but they have completely lost control of the fight. And that is the exact moment when the chief advantage of these motorcycle squads transforms into their fatal flaw during the opening decisive minutes. High speed cannot save a motorcycle crew once they are spotted and a drone is locking on. This is the glaring vulnerability of their entire assault strategy. A bike might cross no man's land quickly, but it offers zero protection once the squad is targeted and under fire. Unlike heavy armor, it provides absolutely no protection against shrapnel, pressure waves, or direct kamikaze drone hits. The rider is totally exposed, completely dependent on sheer speed, and that luck runs out very quickly. Once our incoming munitions lock onto the target, their speed stops being a defense and becomes a literal countdown. The engine is still revving, but their window of survival is shrinking by the second. What looked like rapid mobility seconds ago is now just a moving death trap. The crisis escalates on flat terrain, where these bikes stand out far more than enemy commanders realize. They kick up massive dust trails along predictable routes, making them much easier to hunt from the air than dismounted infantry. Their compact profile means absolutely nothing when there is nowhere left to hide. In combat, extreme speed actually simplifies our tracking, making their vectors of advance completely obvious across the terrain. Once our systems lock on, those riders face zero good options. Pushing forward locks them onto a predictable kill path. Evasive turns bleed their momentum and fragment the assault. Halting is worse. These bikes offer zero ballistic protection under direct fire. The motorcycle is caught in a lethal, tactical bottleneck. It lacks defensive armor to protect the rider and cannot evade once our surveillance assets lock on. This is why early visual detection dictates the entire engagement. The tactical collapse accelerates when hostile infantry is forced to abandon their rides under heavy pressure. The instant they dismount, all velocity is lost. Their tactical spacing immediately disintegrates under fire. Command and control fail, Surviving troops scramble blindly for cover while others scatter across open, lethal ground. Isolated soldiers attempt to press the advance on foot, but their offensive momentum is completely shattered. This marks a decisive pivot. The enemy force is no longer operating as a cohesive unit. They dissolve into isolated targets with zero ballistic cover, shattered comms, and zero time to regain control. Now, survival depends entirely on luck, cover, and our targeting speed. Our fire missions are no longer tracking just machines. We are hunting the troops. Once dismounted from their bikes, every single individual is designated as an active target. Do not mistake the destruction of these motorcycle units as merely a loss of light hostile transport. The reality is that their entire doctrine implodes the moment our reconnaissance and strike networks lock onto them. Russian commanders deploy these high-speed assets to minimize exposure and rush our defensive lines before we can react. But when our early warning radar spots them, those exact tactics seal their doom. High velocity exposes their vector. Unarmored frames offer zero defense. Dispersal turns into total fragmentation under our heavy artillery fire. Retreat on foot is suicide once our drone operators isolate them in the open. Out here, speed does not bypass vulnerability. It only accelerates their destruction. We are seeing a brutal environment where simple adaptation is failing them. They can increase their speed, but it only makes them easier to neutralize once our crews crack their movement patterns. Russia pivoted from heavy armor to these agile, lightweight assault waves to bypass their massive casualty rates. Their heavy armored columns were simply too easy for our forces to target, funnel, and destroy early. Deploying these fast-moving motorcycle units and small fire teams was a desperate attempt to maintain pressure along our line. Their logic was straightforward. Lightweight elements move faster, hit from multiple axes, and avoid presenting the massive signature of a standard armored breakthrough. It was a logical shift in a theater where exposing any concentration of armor means instant destruction. But battlefield adaptation only works if your opponent cannot immediately counter the new threat. In this sector, that plan failed completely. Our defensive lines did not ignore these fast, small-scale incursions. Instead, we integrated them into our targeting cycle and updated our tactics. Changing their vehicles did not save their infantry. It merely altered the way they would die. Our coordination of intelligence assets with explosive drone strike teams transforms their mobility into a lethal liability. A speeding dirt bike seems like a difficult target from a trench, but they stand out clearly to our constant aerial surveillance. High-speed movement generates a massive signature. Vectors expose patterns. Reusing the same advanced corridors allows us to anticipate their moves. When we map these details, an enemy hoping to bypass our sensors becomes simple to track and destroy. This does not mean velocity is useless. It means speed cannot save you from an integrated reconnaissance network that is monitoring every single layer of the airspace. They still have to cross open ground, commit to a corridor, and enter our active engagement zone. Prepare your systems for fire missions. This is the massive tactical reversal driving the entire conflict. Russia tried to minimize exposure by deploying lighter, faster assault units. But Ukrainian forces counterattacked by weaponizing that very speed against them. Instead of escaping the kill chain, these fast units are just feeding it. This development goes far beyond losing a few assault teams on the ground. It proves tactical adaptation is a lethal, fast-evolving race, not a one-sided solution. One side shifts tactics. The enemy studies the shift, locks onto its electronic signature, and counters it. In this hot zone, Ukraine is moving faster inside that deadly cycle. Russia changed their assault formations, but Ukraine revolutionized the environment where those troops must survive. That tactical difference changes everything. It means this brutal war is no longer just about heavy armor or fast maneuvers. It is about reading battlefield data instantly and executing immediate, lethal counterstrikes on the fly. Under these conditions, even smart adjustments become fatal weaknesses. Your units might be faster and far more mobile than before. Yet they are easier to destroy once the enemy decodes your new pattern of movement. And when a tactical breakthrough is neutralized this quickly on the front, the devastating consequences ripple far beyond the initial body count in the dirt. These heavy strikes prove that any frontline movement is a death sentence the second it starts. The sensor-to-shooter loop is now so tight that spotted units have zero time to react. This completely redefines battlefield exposure in modern combat. In previous campaigns, a maneuver unit could survive a brief visual spot by accelerating or cutting to a new heading. Now, that survival margin has vanished. Any squad advancing without smoke, masking, or electronic warfare protection will be targeted long before they hit their objective. This creates a hostile environment where simply moving invites disaster. And this threat is not just for heavy armored columns. Even tiny fire teams are decimated if they cross open ground under relentless drone surveillance. This constant pressure destroys more than physical assets. It wreaks absolute havoc on the mental state of the infantry tasked with advancing. Grunts who know an artillery shell is waiting the second they step out prioritize hiding over capturing their target. That paralyzes command decisions. It guts soldier confidence during the most critical phase of the assault, right before making direct contact. Commanders must map routes for concealment over speed. Every single halt brings the terror of being pinned down. Every push order is issued knowing that stepping out will trigger instant, lethal precision strikes from above. That psychological pressure breeds fatal hesitation. While it may not halt the offensive entirely, it bleeds the vital momentum needed to breach defenses. The operational impact is staggering. When tactical commanders know their every shift is being tracked, they waste precious hours mitigating risk instead of pushing the advance. It grinds the offensive tempo to a crawl. Assault forces are forced to crawl forward, waiting endlessly for fire support or delaying till nightfall. Ultimately, rapid tempo becomes impossible. The battle space naturally favors the army that can force its enemy to freeze. This is why these devastating drone ambushes matter far beyond the immediate casualty count. They expose a brutal front line where maneuver is no longer a tactical advantage. It is a crisis to be managed. That heavy burden paralyzes battle planning, coordination, and execution. An army that is forced to crawl in the shadows cannot wage open, decisive warfare. They must fight to secure their own advance before even engaging the enemy. That reality alone fundamentally shifts the power dynamic on the ground. As these engagements repeat across the front, the very character of combat undergoes a paradigm shift. Victory no longer relies on raw firepower or valor, but on whether troops can advance unseen long enough to strike. This is why these strikes are more than a single tactical victory. They signal a massive, brutal transformation in modern warfare. This latest escalation proves why the war in Ukraine is increasingly being shaped by this is asymmetric warfare. Forget traditional comparisons of armor plating, vehicle weight, or raw firepower. Ukrainian operators are pairing cheap, off-the-shelf drones with advanced reconnaissance systems to inflict damage that vastly outpaces their procurement costs. This matters because tactical lethality is no longer measured by the size of your main gun or the thickness of your heavy armor. Victory goes to whichever side can detect, identify, and destroy a target before the enemy even realizes they are in the crosshairs. In this lethal arena, low-cost assets deliver devastating strategic results when plugged into a rapid, highly disciplined kill chain. This redefines combat efficiency. Regiments no longer need multi-million-dollar platforms to inflict catastrophic losses on the adversary. Commanders must see first, process the intelligence first, and execute high-precision strikes before the enemy can reposition. That is why unmanned aerial vehicles are no longer mere flying bombs or simple scout platforms. They are now fully integrated into a wider digital network that dictates all frontline maneuvers. Their tactical impact goes far beyond simple kinetic destruction. These assets dictate where squads deploy, when they advance, exposure times, and the actual operational freedom commanders retain once troops cross the line of departure. This constant aerial pressure forces both mechanized and light infantry units to adapt. A highly mobile light squad is easy to deploy and disperse, but that operational advantage vanishes the second they are locked under persistent aerial surveillance. Heavy armored columns face the exact same threat, meaning the traditional line between secure transit and hostile exposure has completely dissolved. The critical factor now is whether an assault force can blind enemy sensors long enough to secure their objective. This shift is reshaping modern warfare far beyond a single repelled attack on the front lines. The fight has evolved into a race of information supremacy, and rapid target acquisition. Whichever force links real-time intelligence directly to kinetic strikes will dictate the enemy's movements before the first shot is fired. This gives low-cost tech the tactical influence once restricted to highly complex weapon platforms. Looking at the bigger picture, this is not just about a single squad of motorcycle infantry getting wiped out. It raises the vital operational question: how will assault and defensive units survive under the relentless gaze of persistent aerial surveillance? The Russian military deployed motorcycle infantry, hoping rapid speed would bypass Ukrainian defensive lines before they could react. But this engagement proves that raw speed is useless when the entire battlefield is under constant, unblinking surveillance. The Ukrainian network of reconnaissance and FPV drone strikes neutralized the assault before their momentum could achieve any tactical breakthrough. This is the critical takeaway from the engagement. Rapid movement is dead if you are instantly spotted, tracked, and targeted. In modern combat, victory belongs to whoever dominates the information space. It is about response times. The side that converts situational awareness into kinetic action the fastest wins the fight. This tactical evolution completely rewrites the doctrine of offensive operations. Units that previously counted on speed for survival must now prioritize absolute concealment, smoke, and deception, along with tight command coordination just to reach the line of contact. Future offensives cannot rely on simply outrunning the threat. Success will depend entirely on remaining undetected long enough to engage the enemy on favorable terms. But let us remember, war is not just maps and munitions. It leaves deep scars on soldiers and civilians alike. Deconstructing these modern combat dynamics reminds us why deterrence and preventing these conflicts is so vital. For more detailed military breakdowns, hit like, subscribe to Military Force, and share this briefing to stay informed on An of Vashwan, peace and war.